Hi, listener. This is From Ideology to Unity, a spiritual journey where we let go of ideological doctrine and ego in favor of meaning, purpose, and unity as a whole. Today I'm with Eric Fontaine of the RDO podcast. Hi, Eric. How are you doing today?
Hey Nick, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing good. So I made sure to meditate before this. So I find that
Yeah.
helps get my mind in the right state. So what's your
Yeah, I
routine?
should have. I skipped meditation today.
Yeah, I when I when
um,
I skip it, I can feel the difference.
yeah. Yeah, same thing. Well, I traded meditation for extra sleep this morning, so they're not really interchangeable, but I typically get my daily meditative state in the shower, if I'm being honest. I take about a 30-minute shower, just take some time to really clear my mind, think about nothing in particular, and just kind of get to that calm, even state. And it's interesting. It's pretty much like clockwork. That's the time of day that I get some of my key realizations and really the best ideas kind of come out during that time. So, what about you?
Uh, Honestly, mostly, well, at one point I started doing it every day in the morning. But it's this interesting resistance where I think it's your ego actually doesn't want you to meditate sometimes on some level, on a
Yeah,
subconscious level, right? And so you feel this resistance to it, even though it feels really fantastic to do it, right? So,
yeah,
and sometimes I feel this urge to just get on with stuff, or there's just always this temptation of these interesting videos I could watch, maybe about spirituality or something, that I could just look at that instead of or just work I could get on with, preparing for the next interview and stuff. Um, and but yeah, when I actually make sure to meditate in the morning, or at least later in that day, it helps because I get these a lot of racing thoughts and stuff. I mean, I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I mean, I don't want to be stuck with that ideology, no, that identity, because you know what it's like because how you view yourself determines your reality to some extent, right? But
yeah,
yeah, it's that also I get more anxiety when I don't meditate. Because but sometimes it's not always a problem to have negative emotion come up, in my opinion, because at least it's an opportunity for you to let it go if you respond to it right. So what is it like for you when you get these negative emotions bubbling up? How do you respond to it?
yeah. I mean, same thing. We're as complex as we want to make things. I think we're simple creatures. Like we're complex, but also simple at the same time. Like the key functions, our body lets us know. Excuse me. Our body lets us know what we need to do. So when we start getting anxious and worked up and overwhelmed, like it's time to chill out, And we live in an unnatural environment where we have access to constant stimulus. And there's other factors you could go into, like, the light from the TV or a computer screen or a phone, um, you know, interferes with our body's natural circadian rhythms, our sleep patterns, and it disturbs you in a way that you may not be totally conscious of that could be causing some of those negative effects. But I think, like, you're hungry, eat, you're tired, sleep, and some of the gray areas, like understanding these seemingly minor things that could be having that big negative impact overall. So for me, I tend to get worked up if I'm working too much, if I'm getting too much screen time, and I recognize that. I basically do a detox, if you want to call it that. I step away from the phone, the computer, the TV, everything, and I'll either do something else that I have to do, or spend time playing with my son, or going for a walk, doing anything to get some movement and get away from whatever it is I feel could be triggering that state. So I think just with respect to our natural behavior patterns and the natural order of things, that's really the key to getting back on track. And, it's interesting that meditation is a thing that we do, because I just, in my mind, I like to revert back to a pre-industrial state for for mankind. Like, what would we be doing if we weren't in this suburban or urban type of industrialized environment? We would probably be doing a good bit of walking. There would probably be quite a bit of silence and alone time, you know, like when you're living more of a subsistence farming, or small community type of life or setting. You see things, we've evolved that way. So when you step away from that, I think that's when you have a lot of the issues. So I always try to go back to that mentally first and say, what might I be doing more of in terms of how we evolve naturally?
Yeah, I would largely agree with you. Though we're both interested in the law of one, right? So have you heard the
Yeah.
theory that
So
um aliens basically took their aspect of the different DNA from different species, and sort of that we've got the DNA of different aliens within us, right?
yeah,
And that they guided evolution, or they took a certain species, maybe Neanderthals or whatever, right? And they changed the DNA, or even that maybe just actually in this book I'm reading at the moment, The Synchronicity Key, it suggested that actually no, I don't know if it no, I don't think it did say it. I'm not sure if it did say it or not, but there's this idea that it's like there are these waves that come over the galaxy, right? Over certain periods of time, every now and it's like there's this idea of punctuated evolution, that evolution seems to happen in big steps rather than all gradually. And that it seems to be synchronized with these waves coming over the galaxy. I'm not giving a very good explanation, but basically, it's like they're waves of creation and change that, and
okay.
apparently, like according to the law of one, like we we became modern humans, like with bigger brains, over like 2 generations, while living, like living
Hmm.
metamorphosis. So one way or the other, whether that happened or there was aliens genetically modifying us, the idea that at a certain point, I mean, our evolution was interfered with. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I Well, I think at this point that's more of a scientific fact. So there's a weird gap, and it's very small now, but there's a weird gap between modern scientific understanding and ancient history. The transcriptions throughout ancient history, whether we're talking about pyramids, emerald tablets, Dead Sea Scrolls, we have quite a bit of remnants, though they're fragmented. We have quite a bit of remnants that tells us that advanced beings came from outside of this earth and genetically modified. They even have etched in stone human DNA that's actual, what we would think of a depiction of DNA, the double helix structure and all that. They have these things and spread out through certain monuments. You have stargates in the middle of the desert, you know, doors to nowhere essentially. But when they're transcribed, they explain that, the so-called gods, or however you want to refer to them, would use these stargates. They would activate them and travel from to other worlds.
Was this in
And
Ancient
so
Aliens?
this Ancient Aliens has covered it, but it goes much further than that show. And I used to love Ancient Aliens because it was kind of the only thing of its kind. There wasn't. It was either that or some some super corny sci-fi, I don't know, UFO abduction or sighting, like
Sign.
not even a B movie, just like just almost like a homemade movie. It was either that or Ancient Aliens. So I used to be a huge fan, and no shade to them, but they're on a major network, so they don't really get anywhere. They don't get to. It's all speculation
What
with
about
them.
Stargate? SG-1.
Yeah, I mean, that's you can see real information tied into the show. I would say I haven't seen all of like the new reboot of it, but um, I mean, it seems all right. I haven't really watched it, but I think all this stuff is influenced in some part by truth. Now, again, that doesn't mean that the fictional show is like a documentary. They make a movie out of it. They make a show out of it, a movie out of it, and they add some fictional fun to it. But I think at the core of the idea or inspiration of the show is truth. Now, let's get into one fact, which is we're the only creature on Earth with a fused chromosome. So our last chromosome is actually fused, and that's scientists, geneticists point at that as living proof of genetic modification. So it appears that all the ancient accounts of us having been modified by the hominid DNA that was on this planet with, in some part, DNA of advanced beings seems to be a feasible hypothesis, at least. So this gets even weirder from there. But um, in short, we have an abundance of evidence that suggests that that's exactly what happened.
Right. And there's something I want to mention here, which is in this book, by David Wilcock, The Synchronicity Key. In the first chapter, he's describing how they've got these experiments where they get one, they got one vial of water, and they put DNA in it, and the other they didn't put DNA in, and they zapped it with small amount of electricity, and when they came back, one of them had grown a bit of DNA, right? Because it had started DNA and like more grew, right?
Yeah,
The other one started out with nothing but water and had DNA in it.
but that's water is a living substance.
Right, but the DNA, the molecules that make it up require more than H2O.
Right. So was it the same DNA in both of them, or
I can't remember
what?
that detail, but
Because they found that, yeah, I mean, life starts anywhere that there's water.
right, but it gets weirder because they took away the DNA from there because no, because basically they found this the DNA automatically starts moving. Shit, no, I've got to read this out. I know it's like me reading out at you, but this is just. I was going to do a solo cast about this at some point, but like, um, this stuff is just like amazing.
It's like
So
something from nothing, basically.
kind of, yeah. But basically, if you take it away, okay, so they naturally absorb photons towards themselves, and they naturally move towards DNA moves towards similar DNA over the equivalent. relatively, of huge distances. And so basically, it automatically starts growing and healing or whatever. And if you take away the DNA and the spiral of photons stays in that form for like 48 days or something like that. And it's like they found they found microbes perfectly evolved to live in high radiation conditions and to feed off the radiation in a nuclear reactor that was completely sealed with no
Hmm.
life in it, and it spontaneously appeared, and they have no explanation for how it appeared.
Well, the reactors also it goes back to the reactors also contain water, you know. So there,
Water might be a key
yeah,
feature here.
where there's water, there's life, and that's I hear what you're saying, and I think it's absolutely true. Like we can't make sense of this from our currently evolved understanding. We think we know everything, but we know next to nothing.
Yeah,
And
and
that's the
science,
most important thing to realize is like we we
we know
don't
nothing.
know.
We know
Yeah.
nothing, Jon
Yeah.
Snow.
We
Right?
don't even know. Tell me tell me how far we can actually like speak confidently on in terms of human history.
Yeah, and
Not very
nothing.
far, like not even 100 years back, let alone, from the dawn of man
And
to now.
then there's this whole thing about people talking about um deluges, right? And they're claiming that vast swathes of the history are made up and changed. I don't necessarily buy into that per se, although I do think that, there's like Atlantis and stuff like
Yeah, we're
before.
definitely missing a bunch, like the bulk of it.
Also, like apparently, like I'll read this out. New science tells us that the universe is constantly conspiring to make new biological life wherever and however it can, even in the most utterly inhospitable places. In any given area of the universe, these hidden microgravitational waves will begin gathering atoms and molecules together that make DNA. The waves build whatever life forms that naturally thrive in the area, beginning with single cell and organisms. Amazingly, British astronomers Sir Fred Hoyle and Dr. Nalin Chandra Wickram Sandinki, I can't pronounce that correctly, found that 99.9% of all the dust floating around in our galaxy is free-dried bacteria. I mean, that's like, what? So Fred Hoyle revealed full implications of this new discovery. Um, right, so basically, a lot of these two things I've been talking about, like, it hasn't been revealed, like by
Yeah,
mainstream scientists. The media doesn't talk about it.
it's because they can't explain it yet.
I'm not allowed to,
That's
as well. That's what I
yeah.
think. Uh,
But no one likes to, like, no one publishes a book when it's half written, so they like to play the all-knowing, respective source. We have all the answers, we know how it works, but when you break it down, you get down to it, they don't, there's a lot of missing information. There's a lot. Like, let's take something kind of related to this, in that there's several species of primate that have been observed in real-time evolution. Like we've talked about how it seems to happen in waves and in real time. And excuse me. So some of these primates have evolved on their own, like without human interference, to begin fashioning tools, using tools. For a long time, they've used rocks and things to like break open shells, or, even at weaponize rocks and objects like that. But now, literally, some of these primate species are starting to hunt with spears
really now.
in the water.
There's a
Yeah,
new wave coming over us now. That's what I think is going
yes,
on. I mean,
yes. And
there's
this is
stuff
this may
about
even be like 8 months or more old.
oh Right.
This
Well,
may
there's
have
this
been
stuff
like 8
about
months
this
ago, but
light coming from the center of the galaxy that people are talking about, and they kind of claim it's going to hit on the 21st of December. But the truth is that,
hmm,
and there's also this galactic plane, and we've kind of gone on over to the other side of it very recently. And basically, we've got into an area where it's a lot of cosmic rays coming our way.
yeah,
And it seems to me that the idea that these waves come out repeatedly from the center of the galaxy. And I think if you think about the law of one, there's probably a high density being, maybe seventh density or something, like creating, having creation, wheeled conscious creation out through the whole galaxy. And
yeah.
every time it happens, there are changes. Um,
It's like
and that's what
thought
we're going
and
through as
where the
well.
thought forms.
Yeah. Have you noticed that cats sometimes start acting like humans when they're around you? They start acting they're like they're acting egotistical or whatever, or jealous of other cats and stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
I've got a theory about this. So we're going up to from third density to fourth density, right? If
Yeah.
they're going from third density to fourth, right? And if going to fourth density for us means that our heart chakra becomes much more activated, then for them that means their this is green ray, the yellow ray chakra is the one being activated, which they'll start acting in some of them, the more advanced ones will start acting in more yellow ray ways, right?
Yeah.
And that's my theory. And if they start acting like egotistical arseholes more than cats normally do, then that's showing they're actually ascending. That's my theory.
Yeah. That could be, I go back to a quote from uh, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's, I don't even remember the entire thing, but this one part stuck out to me where he says, even the worm strives to be man. So it's like he had some concept of this evolutionary chain of the soul or the spirit from literally the smallest organism all the way up to the pinnacle of being man. And now we, as being in that state, we can even look and see a step further than that on how we might, ascend to maybe a non-physical form, um, and a higher level of existence.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, have you heard about, so I'm sure you've heard about Nietzsche's idea of the Superman or the Übermensch
yeah,
as being as much, the comparison would be as we are to monkeys, like they are to us.
yeah,
That's the way you put it, basically. And a lot of people think, some people obviously interpret it in a racial way, but when
mm.
you read
I
it,
don't think
it
that that
does. It
was the
doesn't seem like
intention.
that's what he's talking about at
No,
all. He's
no,
talking
I
about
think
a
it
more
could be
high level of
misappropriated.
consciousness. That's what he seems to
Yeah,
be talking about. And he's
yeah,
talking about people who get very sucked up in the sort of their egos, basically. He doesn't put it that way, but that's what he's talking about in Dystopia, Dystopia. And he's there's this preacher who's trying to tell people about how it really is, like about the Superman, and they're just like they're not listening. So what he
yeah,
does is he tells them about the last man, and he's like, look, there will come a time where I don't have the quote directly at hand, but like I could actually look in the book, but I'm not going to. There'll come a time where it's basically it's like a honestly, what he basically goes ahead and does is describe what a lot of us are like now. It is it basically self-absorbed, self-righteous, and like and stuff like that. I'm not giving a very good explanation of it, but
well,
the way
I have a theory for that. I think I think we've been corralled into the trappings of comfort within our society
uh
in an
yeah,
attempt to trigger sort of a de-evolved state. because we were like
Yeah.
skyrocketing in the right direction.
Yeah.
And now there's like an injection of all of these dopamine triggering activities and substances, like from the food, everything, food, drink, entertainment, everything. It's
It's all connected, right?
designed. Yeah,
Started in the 19th century or earlier. Let's go to 19th century. Like they started out with certain products. Actually, basically, yeah, we were just given this. For example, the internet is a double-edged sword because on one hand, I wonder if they deliberately tried to use the internet at first to actually get us hooked on it or something. I don't know, but essentially we've become very short-termist, very reliant on watching TV or getting these, or in food or medicine, getting these fixes,
mm-hmm.
getting this pleasure from various sources, and they don't want us to have open our hearts and be empathetic so much, but rather, I mean, if you look at what pornography has been like, I mean, a lot of it's heartless. It's not it's not like loving stuff.
No, and it's
It's
not
that
meant to be.
it's that desire, but without a heart. It's just the base instinct, just like the low bottom three chakras, and typically
Everything
it goes down
is
to the red one,
trying.
bottom one.
Everything is trying to throw us off the evolutionary path to our higher self. Now,
Right.
there's a bigger
Everything.
question. It's like who, and your audio kind of is tuning out just a little bit. It sounds real low. But so the bigger question I have, and maybe some who are listening right now are wondering, who would want to do this and
I have an
why?
answer. I
I
refer
want
you
to hear it.
to Alex Jones and David Icke.
Yeah.
uh, no,
Yeah,
I don't
who
think
are
there
the
was wrong with.
globalists, right?
Okay,
That's
well, there's different levels of it, right? Because there's
yeah.
this whole pyramid. So, well,
Do you
I'd
think,
say
hold on, first question, do you think they're even human? At the pinnacle of everything going on right now, is this human influence or potentially something
it's
else?
a combination. Because I think there are service to self humans who, whether they own and know completely or not, are very, their whole purpose in life is to sort of aid their own evolution as a soul by just being completely self-interested. Now, these beings don't might not even give a fuck if humans go extinct, as long as they get what they want short term, and if that means they, and on a soul level, maybe they're trying to service the self, so they're trying to send the other way up, the service to self path, or maybe they get caught up in trying to gain things for themselves, or they're psychopaths and they don't know the full picture. But in any case, and Bill Gates is someone who's got very ambitious and was probably manipulated along the way, but also has a lot of responsibility. People like that. Then there's the Rothschilds, and there's certain families in what's something called the cabal, or you could call it the Illuminati, or apparently there's 13 families of them, and maybe so. I suspect that then there's the whole thing about people talk about people being possessed, or like these
Yeah.
beings, right? Negative beings.
Yeah, that's where
And
you have people. Why does it always go to that? It's like at the highest level, it seems that fear is the greatest tool. It seems
there's
like
fear,
that's
control, but fear is ultimately the root of all the rest, I think. Um, so yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is that people who are selves the self, fundamentally, I believe that what it is, there's a fundamental dishonesty with the set with themselves, and a fundamental fear. They're ruled by fear. They might put on the facade of, oh, they're strong. They're doing it out of they're stronger, right? That, but really, it's kind of like they're scared of. Well, actually, I'm going a tangent. So I think there's this whole pyramid, the cabal, and then there's the head of the 13 families, right? Heads of that. And but above that, basically manipulating all the whole thing, you get reptilians and negative energy beings, maybe fifth density or something. I don't know. Now yeah, and I know it sounds crazy to most people, but whatever. Like I've it seems to make sense to me, honestly.
Well, it's more than just, there's more. And I'm sorry, I've got like something's going on down the street. I can hear some beeping. I don't know if you, can you hear
I can
that?
hear it. I assume it's
I don't
technological,
know
right?
what
It's
it
not like
is.
ooh.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know.
So I just wanted to make sure it wasn't like too loud because it's kind of loud on my end. So there's different types of advanced life according to the ancient archaeology, the ancient history that we have. Like in one of those stargates that I mentioned earlier, that's in like the middle of the desert. On along the stargate, there's a wall, and there's a wall depicting somewhere in the range of like 50 different types of human-like species. A lot of them look like us, and then you have like some reptilian in there, a couple reptilian faces, and I think there was one that kind of resembled the traditional head of the gray that we would think of, like
Right.
the sci-fi alien profile. And then there were several others. Most of them looked human-like.
We look
Um,
alien. Actually, we look like them. That's my theory.
right,
Or
yeah.
rather, the source likes to create beings of a certain sort of template. That's
Yeah,
what.
but I think the most interesting part was that there were so many, first of all, and that's pretty old. So, I mean, that's whoever was interacting and established in some way at that time, right? So there could be like infinitely more spread across the universe. But so there were somewhere in the likes of 50 different types, and it was almost like that's what the wall was describing. That this was some sort of international or intergalactic, if you will, um, way of transportation, and they had all these representations of what we would refer to as intelligent life. So that just kind of tripped me out. It's like people hear reptilians and they think, okay, come on, conspiracy theory, this and that. But why do we have ancient depictions of reptilian
All right.
humanoid beings?
I'll tell you something. So the theory goes that there's reptilians that have been living underground for a long time. But I'm curious what you think as a response, because my brother actually, he actually made a very good, asked me a very good question, which was, if they're underground reptilians and they need light, how do they survive? I think I've got an answer, but I want to see your answer.
Yeah, so you brought up a good point. Let me start with this, just to give a little prehistory on this theory. So I always go back to ancient history because it's so rich with information. I mean, it's all we've got at the end of the day. And in some of these ancient artifacts, we see hand drawn land maps of Antarctica, which is under miles and miles of ice today.
Right.
And since the previous ice age, so as long as we've been aware, Antarctica has been in this state. So scientists were shocked to find not just one, but many, many land maps of Antarctica, which was drawn as a completely green land, water flowing, like any land map today. So we see things like that. And let me know if this stuff is getting too loud. Again, there's something going on the street here. I don't know what if they're doing construction or what, but
So
I
it's not
can kind of.
supernatural.
What's that?
It's not supernatural then. Because it sounds like it could be a drill or it could be some sort of
No, it's like it's some kind of
whaling.
machinery or maybe a large truck picking something up. I don't really know. I can't see it from here. I'm on the other side of the house, but I'll just try and I'll just try and talk over it
It's
a
not a
little bit.
problem. It's just some benefit.
Okay. Okay. So back to it. So we have like hand drawn land maps of Antarctica. We have the world in a different state. And one of the things, along with these artifacts that they found, were maps of, and I'm going to drop some nuggets here, but maps of Atlantis, Lemuria, maps of the world in a different state. And they've kind of picked it apart and said, okay, well, this looks like Africa, and this looks like, there's the Pangea theory
Was
and
it a
everything.
continent in the East Pacific?
What's that?
Continent in the East Pacific.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out a little
A
bit.
continent in the East Pacific.
Yeah,
Wait, it's called
which
Mu
one?
apparently. MU.
Yep, Mu. There's Mu, which is, if I'm not mistaken, it goes back to Mu, Lemuria, Atlantis, and then from there, Kemet, which is modern day Egypt.
Oh yeah,
So
Kemet or
the
Kem,
land of
K-H-E-M.
Kim, the
Oh,
land of
I
Kim.
want to clarify something about our previous when I interviewed you. I think you were right. The Anunnaki did come before Thoth did, and so it means that the Atlanteans were around at the same time as the Anunnaki to some extent.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like they were. So
No, they're not the
that's
same.
another. Hold on, hold on. So I want to give to that. So we find these ancient artifacts. We find these ancient land maps of things that we call today. We just call it myth. We dismiss it as myth without proving it doesn't exist, or didn't exist. So in addition to these, one of the most shocking things that I came across was something called the land of Agartha. And you've probably
Under,
heard of it,
mm,
but the way you enter Agartha is through one of the many massive portals on the surface of the earth. And when I say portal, I mean like literally a hole, like a giant opening in the earth, not a mystical portal that teleports you or something. I mean a portal, a huge giant opening on the surface of the earth. Now they described there being many portals, many ways to the land of Agartha, and they showed that there's entrances and caves and mountains. There's massive entrance to where, again, what we refer to as Antarctica today, that was the main portal to Agartha. And they said, this is the inner earth theory based on these findings, which is that these artifacts clearly depict and describe the ability to enter our earth through a large opening on the surface, and there being an inner earth, an interior earth going on there. So not what we would think of in terms of crust,
inner
mantle.
continents.
Yes. And
So
with it,
how much do you think it's just? It's not like hollow like a tennis ball, right? It's more like there's
no, it's,
large areas that are
yeah,
like huge caverns, sort of thing.
yeah. So, well, there's
Continent-sized
that, but
caverns, right?
that's more like surface level. So if you go to uh, some of the, I believe it's the Australian Aborigine and also like the Native American folklore, like all the way back as far as you can go, they described their people being saved by some sort of reptilian type of underground dwelling beings. They have tons of artwork showing their people, these Native Americans, being brought into sort of a crust level, but underground type of cavernous environment.
Hmm.
So I think when I hear the caverns, I think of that. It's like underground, but not to the level of what we would call the inner earth or
Right.
Gartha.
Well, there's different theories that there's not all the reptilians are. There's some that colonized here before we humans were here,
Yeah.
and
And they're not the only ones, apparently.
there's some that naturally evolved here that aren't actually necessarily so unfriendly.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's interesting because we have reptiles and mammals on Earth, right? But they're totally different. So where I'm going with that is like apparently there were mammalian dinosaurs and reptilian dinosaurs as well. So we see like an extension of this ecosystem or food chain or animal kingdom, if you want to call it that, where it seems like each one has the same components. Like
There's different densities. You get the same comparable forms and different densities, which is why you get aliens that have animalistic features, or rather
yeah,
the other way around. Like, because apparently the Syrians have a link, not SY. It's not like from Syria. It's not like
yeah,
Assad or something. But like the Syrians, apparently they linked to, they come from somewhere that's aquatic apparently
huh,
originally, and apparently and they're linked to like whales and dolphins. They're linked to that. The lions are apparently linked to cats. The I have no idea about the Arcturians. Um, and there's others too. It's interesting that there's
yeah. And it makes
obviously
sense
well,
because we had this fusion of cultures and different beings and species. We don't know what happened. We still can't explain. I know this sounds funny, but we still can't explain how domestic cats are the way that they are. We have no clue how they evolved to be tiny little cats that have the same nature of large cats. It's like we know how dogs evolved, but
domestic cats actually have a way higher successful hunt rate than any other cats.
I'm not
They're killing
surprised.
machines, absolute killing
Yeah,
machines.
yeah, like millions and millions of birds and rats and things like that a year. Yeah, but it seems like they were deliberately. I mean, obviously, dogs were deliberately bred and made to be a certain way. But while we like to act like we know everything, we can't even articulate how the domestic cat came to be.
I just
It seems
realized
like nothing, but it's a
maybe
kind of a big
Source,
deal.
maybe Source just no, this is ridiculous. No, I was going to make a joke about catgirls because the lions are like must have females. So I mean, like, I guess Source is a weeb, right? Sorry, that's just terrible.
The oh man. So I know it sounds kind of trivial, but we have all these things that we take for granted that seem to be like deliberately engineered or bred or placed in certain circumstances that we enjoy and it's just a normal part of life today, but we don't think about evolution in terms of everything. Like we don't think about where did all of this come from? Where did reptiles how do we have so many different species of animals here and how did they evolve? Because if you just say that it all randomly evolved to be totally different things, maybe that's true. It doesn't really make sense to me because if we're dealing with the same starting basis, why would everything come to evolve so differently across similar environments? That's the part where it's like, yeah, I can't explain all of existence, but what I'm saying is for the shorter term of ancient history, it seems feasible to entertain the idea that maybe there were different animal kingdoms, so to speak, and the intelligent life being at the top of that. So we're at the top of the mammal kingdom. Like we're mammals, we give
Well, at the top
live
of the
birth,
third density one, anyway.
right? But when you break it down to we're not reptilian, you know, we're mammalian. We
Well, we have a
produce
reptile
milk.
part of our brain.
We do.
There's a
Yeah.
theory that that part of the brain is more predominant in reptilians.
And that's what I was going to say is we call it reptilian because of the function and the way but it's not like we can literally pick it out and say, yep, this matches, this belongs to a reptile. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's
yeah,
more of
yeah,
the
of course.
functionality of it. But at in our physical being, we're classified as mammals. And in history, we see depiction of people much like us, but they don't look exactly like us. They're reptilian. They have scales. They have reptilian looking eyes. You know, why would that exist in historical record
Well,
if
I
it
heard.
wasn't real?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I heard that when they landed on the moon, they actually at one point got chased by reptilians.
Hmm. I
I,
don't know,
I
man.
can't
There's
verify
so
that.
many
But,
wild stories out there. It's kind of it's kind of frustrating how much like fake stuff you have to sort through to get to like an actual fact. But with that said, we kind of go back to Agartha, inner Earth. What would that mean for us if there was an inner Earth with its own sun? Is what they describe, that it has
that's
its own
probably either
sun.
technological or maybe Gaia has its own light source.
We don't know. It's
Uh,
just hard. It's hard to imagine when we think we know something and then a new idea is presented and now there's a cognitive dissonance because we
right.
say no, the earth is made of magma. It's, you
Well, we
know,
were
got
taught
a
that, right?
molten core. I mean, I don't know. Is it? Does it? Maybe it does along the
It might be
way,
a
and then
fusion. There might be a bit of
yeah,
both. Maybe there's underground areas where there's civilization, and maybe there's a core elemental as well. Um,
I can tell you, I have no clue, but I like to keep an open mind.
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, there's a lot of different theories. So, but it's interesting that so in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, it talks about so these people were trying to do some dark ritual or something because some of the Atlanteans, because they had souls that were, I think, from Mars, because Mars had this good cataclysm because people were like fucking around with
Well,
things they shouldn't have there.
it was war. It was war.
Nuclear war, apparently.
that that's why Mars is referred to as the god of war.
Yeah, I mean, like, and then there's the whole how that fits into different energies quadrants coming from the sun, but we'll go to that. Um, David Wilcott goes into that, but so he talks about so they did getting stuff they shouldn't have, and then the I think it was the dweller. I don't know who the dweller is or what the dweller is, but rose up and basically the certain there was like the energy. I get the impression it's almost like the energy grid of the earth, fundamental of the energy of the earth was like shifted to another valve or something. It's hard to explain. And then and it caused certain continents to collapse and certain to rise up, like pole shift sort of thing or something. And
Yeah.
like
So
much of Atlantis fell beneath the sea and stuff like that. I'm trying to
yeah,
I'll see if I can
you're on the
find
right
the section.
track there. So you know, it's interesting that you bring that up because we're actually in the middle of another pole shift right now,
Yeah, and
as of
rapidly as
months
well.
ago. Yeah. So for those who don't know, true north has moved so far off from traditional true north that literally everything is having to recalibrate. You may have noticed like several months ago that, and I know this sounds funny, but that your Google Maps, if you use that, if your navigation was actually pointing the wrong way, almost a quarter turn. True north has moved, if I'm not mistaken, like over 30 degrees, because we rely on a magnetic field to maintain that true north, and it's shifted somewhere in the realm of like 30 degrees off of actual true north. That's the result of the Earth's magnetic field shifting. That's a pole shift. It's happening rapidly. It's going to continue. And oh, I can't believe I forgot this book. I'm going to have to send this to you. It's going to blow
Right.
your mind. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there was a book that I came across when I was researching this, and the obscurity behind it. I've got it bookmarked, but I
Is
don't want
it
to hold up
recent?
the show. No, it's very old actually. It's like 50 or 60 years old. And what happened was this book was released as
CIA
false.
document?
Yes. Yes and no. So when it was initially released, it was released as a so-called work of fiction, but it was actually released by a government employee who was essentially declassifying information that he had come across, and the CIA, I guess, banned the book and only recently released certain pages of it, but it's still redacted like crazy. I mean, the majority of it is blacked out, but in the book, he's
Yeah.
talking about the coming pole shift, the impending doom that's going to follow, and all this stuff, like another ice age or something. I mean, I can go on, but it's insane. It's insanely interesting. And what's even more interesting is how it was banned and controlled and now only recently declassified a little bit by our
Yeah.
own government.
We
So,
still don't know what's going to happen, though, even considering that's been written. And oh, I don't know. I view like the planet as, and also it's linked to the sun, apparently, the activity. But if you view the
yeah.
planet as conscious, it kind of depends on what Mother Earth decides to do.
Yeah. And maybe that depends on how much we're actually ruining the planet or holding it together. I don't know. I think everything has a way of keeping balance. And so, if we're just on a road uh, to where things hit a point of no return, which maybe they have. I mean, I don't know what, I don't want to be a pessimist, but we've had some um, nuclear waste continues to leak at basically almost every plant. Like people think about nuclear waste and they think, oh, every now and then there's an accident. This stuff doesn't go away. And on top of that, even under normal circumstances, most of these plants are already old, outdated, and they're unsafe. They're fundamentally
Do you think
unsafe.
it's meant to be that way?
I think I don't think it's meant to be. I think we're just like, I'm gonna pull a Joe Rogan here, but I think we're kind of like monkeys when it comes to this stuff. Like we
Well, when we're
don't,
going an ego, yeah, a lot of the time.
yeah, we know how to do it, but we're not being responsible enough with it. Like we're not
Okay,
taking responsibility along that comes along with the technology.
yeah. So my impression is that after this Great Awakening, which does seem like it's actually going to succeed. We're not going to, the dark plan won't succeed. But I could go into that later why I don't think they'll succeed. But our job afterwards is to take care of Mother Earth and help her recover from what we've put her through.
Yes.
Even though you could say we got manipulated by reptilians, we still have responsibility for going along with it, for all of that. Like we can't just and and from there, I mean, once we've actually helped the Earth recover, I mean, even before that, we can become part of a galactic community, right? But
We already are. We
yeah,
already are part of
in a
it,
sense.
whether we realize it or not. So I think you're right. And I think you touched on a point earlier that you can find in different Hermetic teachings, and also, various esoteric literature where they discuss the collapsing of certain realities and the merging into one. So it's like you can maybe even look back on your own life where maybe you had a close call or a decision you could have made that would have led you down a path where your life wouldn't be the same. Maybe you would have gotten to an accident if you left 5 minutes earlier, or kind of the butterfly effect concept. But what I'm saying is that as the person that you are right now, you can't know anything truly outside of your personal experience. So it gets into the idea that maybe you did die on your way to work that day, but you didn't live that experience. That simulation of reality ran, and then that version of reality collapsed and merged into the the fork in the road where you didn't die on your way to work, and now your story keeps going.
Right.
And so these
It's
that realities are constantly collapsing and merging in a different way as this sort of matrix uh, unfolds and runs these reality simulations.
right. So will one and source, we, we create, source creates separation so that it can experience new experiences. That has amnesia, and then it gradually learns more as it goes
Yeah.
along, right?
Yep.
And so there's source aspect of creation. Oh no, no, it's not of creation, it's the creator. And that's all of our souls essentially separated out, but ultimately still one.
Yep.
And this is infinite. And then there's the infinite hologram, which is everything created by that.
Yeah.
Now, this hologram, this involves many timelines. And this is what people have been talking about in the Great Awakening community, is that there's many timelines. And well, suppose, as you said, if you die, it collapses into our timeline. And your soul, you just switch what frequency you're on, like a dial.
Yep.
And depending on your emotional frequency, you change to the different timelines that match that of you.
Yes.
And then you only really die if your soul quits, essentially. If your soul decides, okay, it's better at this point to die, or maybe that's when you've decided the whole time that you're going to die. I don't know. But certainly, the you that crashed and died, whatever, either that's still going parallel, but now, if you nearly died at one point, I mean, this is a sobering thought. There might be a timeline where, your family had to deal with you dying years ago.
Yeah. And then
I mean,
maybe the same thing happens for them. Maybe
yeah,
that, and it's hard to explain because it is so dynamic that it's like, wait, what? But I go back to the one thing is like, we only have our own personal experience. So while we may look around and see this person got hit while by a bus while they were riding their bike and they died in the street, you saw it. People die. That's not to say that that doesn't really happen, but maybe there's a concurrent reality in which that didn't happen for them, and so it's just parallel
right.
realities carrying on. And then somehow, some way, as time goes on, this all plays out to a certain end result. So
Yeah. So I wonder, think about it. If you've got a friend, right, and does do you know if in the timeline you're in, do you know if their soul is in that timeline, or if they're in a higher one or lower one?
I don't think we can know definitively, but I think that in a way, for me, this helps me make sense of why we have deja vu. That's just my theory. It's like, why else? Like, there's been a couple of times where I knew I had seen something before,
Yeah, I've
and
had that.
I was literally able to call out what was going to happen, and then it happened. And now you can argue, oh well, maybe you exerted your influence on it, or maybe it's coincidence. Mm, if you think lightning strikes twice, like I said, there's been a couple of times where I'm like, I saw the whole thing and I remembered it like a memory. I remembered what was going to happen before it happened. And I'm not psychic, I can't tell the future. It's just been a couple of moments, and they were nothing super significant. It was just like a regular moment in the day, but I was able to call it out ahead, and then boom, it happened. So, what is that? What is that?
I mean, it could be seeing the future. I mean, there's people who have dreams of events that just have play out exactly like that,
Yeah, but why?
or it's synchronicity, and it's like your higher self trying to teach you something.
What does that mean for our reality, though? And that's where I go back to it's
Mind
very
over matter.
possible.
We create a mental, or not mental way, from our soul. We create a simulation, a spiritual simulation. That's what we're experiencing, and there's different levels of it. And 5D reality is what we're shifting into, but it can't be all at once usually, because that's going to be feel a bit weird to, because
Yeah.
it's different and we don't even know what it's going to be like. Now we can speculate, but I highly suspect that from what I can tell, fourth dimensional beings do still have bodies, and it's five dimensional density where you no longer have you have just a purely light body, and there's this diagram I've seen it. Um, it's like this pyramid, and it shows like these different densities going up, and there's a fourth one above us which shows an alien face or
Yeah.
something, and then the fifth is, and the sixth is apparently thought forms or something, like the Christ consciousness or something.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard one person I'm really into, I might have already mentioned him, but Billy Carson goes into a lot of this stuff. And I just caught a recent video of him explaining that they've been running certain thought experiments where they will show someone a certain picture, and then they have like it's either something traumatic and unpleasant or something pleasant, peaceful, and they just run through every so many. It varies, but at random, they show a traumatic picture, right? A random order. And after conducting this experiment several times, several people involved, they were able to conclude that your mind knows what's going to happen 7 seconds before it's done. So they couldn't explain, but they're showing a series of images, right? And positive, 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 at random, negative, traumatic image. You know, could be somebody laying injured on the floor, badly wounded, some random stuff. But what they found was your mind reacts to the negative image 7 seconds in advance. So every 5 seconds, they would show a new image. And that's how they were able to space it out, where your mind every time is reacting to the negative image before it is sent. So what he was articulating was that this means that we have about a 7 second delay in our perception of reality and actual reality. So
Hmm.
he also went on to explain that time is really just relevant based on who you are, meaning, like, you know, we're humans, so our time looks a certain way to us, but a bird's time is much faster. So when we look at a bird, say a hummingbird, and they're zipping around, or even a fly or an insect, they're experiencing time differently than we are. Like, it's all relative.
Mm.
So that's why he was saying, like, to them, we would look like we're moving slow, like a big slow giant, trying to catch
Yeah. You
them
ever try
or
to spot a
swat at
fly
them.
with your hand?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They see the TV completely differently.
yeah. So that's all. I mean, it makes sense, but they're starting to conduct these experiments and really peel back the layers of reality and understand, wait a minute, this is not all quite how we thought. And then you can even go to something like Interstellar, the movie Interstellar, where they illustrated the concept of time being different on another planet, which it is, like when an astronaut travels to space or the moon or whatever, they experience time differently than we do, if
Did
that
you
makes
see
sense.
that scene where he's looking through time at different points,
Yes.
whereas she
Yeah.
experiences differently? Maybe it's like that in between incarnation, right? That
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe you can jump back in. I don't know. Maybe you jump back in, or you incarnate as something else.
do you ever hear random tapping noises? Like I was in the bathroom like before we did this, and like I heard like when I was in the bathroom. Now it could have been some pump or something, but I was like, huh. uh
Yeah, I do. I mean, not so much tapping. Not It's not like a recurring thing. One thing I do hear, and maybe people will dismiss this as what is it called, tinnitus or something, where you hear the ringing
oh
in
yeah,
your
I'm getting it right
ears.
now.
Yeah, I pretty much it's pretty much all the time, but not it's not all the time, and
It's an ascension symptom.
I want to distinguish why. I can hear I can hear when the Wi-Fi router is on or not
When did you start?
in my house.
When did it start?
Probably 2 years ago,
All right.
something like that.
It'd be interesting if it was 2012. That would be really interesting. But
No, I mean, the main reason being is because before I went through a number of years. I haven't talked about this publicly yet, but I went through a number of years of being totally detached from everything. No internet, no TV. I still don't have TV, like cable TV, but no internet, no TV, nothing. And I
but it was
was
good for you.
100. What's that?
Was it good for you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was a metamorphosis because I went 100% in on getting somewhere, like building the business, educating myself. Like if I did play anything, it was an audiobook or some kind of motivational or some insight in a positive context on YouTube or whatever it may have been. So I totally detached. I went full in on this. And seriously, only about roughly 2 years ago, I got internet, for mostly for work. And yeah, we watch stuff. We stream stuff mostly on Amazon Prime. I know this kind of leads into another. We had Netflix, but I canceled Netflix over a certain controversial film you probably have heard
Oh
of.
yeah. Well, I want to mention
Yeah.
an idea that I've got first.
Okay.
So it's 2 years ago, roughly, that you started really
Well, when we got the internet, I was able to hear if it was on or not. I always
right,
unplug it
but
at
you
night.
started your frequency started raising, right? When
Yeah.
you started detaching from all that stuff. That's my theory. And that made you able to hear this when previously you wouldn't have, because it's an ascension symptom, maybe.
Maybe. I hadn't really thought about it before. So that could be it too. But
I don't know. It's an
um,
idea.
I didn't understand much about the frequency and all that. I want to say like 7 years ago. So I went for a period of basically like 5 years with no internet, no TV, nothing. And it was great. Seriously, I made a lot of personal progress in that time,
Hmm.
and I was able to build what I have going on today. So now I use it as a utility, but when I'm not using it, I just unplug it.
Right.
So
I think that the elites, or whatever you call them, whatever, they want us constantly distracted, want us
yeah,
active, want us distracted so we don't deal with our own emotions, right?
yeah,
It could
that's
be
it.
alcohol, it
So
could
you
be,
don't evolve.
right? And then you bottle things up, you repress things, right? And what happens is, and we haven't been doing art so much. Art is supposed to be apparently something that we do on a day-to-day basis, but they've separated it out as there's normal jobs, and then there's this art on the side.
Yeah.
And then like, so we don't have that outlet or that right brain outlet where we for emotions so much. And then people get hyped up on all these different things. And then like, so what does that do? I mean, that would get in the way of the heart opening, right? The heart chakra.
Yeah, it's like being
And
in a cage.
right, and when you don't have that open, you just get in these tribes politically, and you don't, or whatever, right? And you don't empathize so much with other people outside of that,
Yeah.
because, and that makes you basically, that makes people easier to manipulate, so they can
Yeah.
manipulate events more and get, and so
But
the idea, I believe there's a reptilian plan, which will fail, to gradually, through controlling us, bring in transhumanism,
oh
cut us
yeah.
off more and more from nature,
Yep.
and get us more and more addicted to like more and more extreme pornography and stuff like that, more and more extreme this, that, and the other drugs, etc. All this stimulation, and eventually they can just put all our experience into artificial, to put all experience into artificial simulation, and then they want to steal the soul energy or something, and
So
then
they want to.
gradually make us go extinct and then rule Earth.
Yes.
That's the
That's what I
evil
think.
Archon plan, basically.
Yeah.
And it's going to fail
That's
because the awakening is okay. So there's the awakening, and then there's the assistance from the fleet. That's what, because there's the people are channeling people like Ashtar Command and stuff. Have you heard about that?
a little bit. A little bit.
It's,
More on an individualized basis, but I think, and I could probably go. I don't know if I want to go into a personal story, but I'll just say this for now. So I think our awareness, our senses, our evolution, whatever you want to call it, is being accelerated congruently with what we perceive as being our impending doom, which would be like global communism, a dystopian society in which we can't be human, we can't be free and
right.
human. We're forced into a transhumanism,
It's an attempt to
and
stop the awakening because
yeah,
they lose
yeah,
their power. So they're just increasingly accelerating what they're doing. But
yes,
the thing
and
is, because they're based off fear, I would
right,
say they're actually losing control,
absolutely. I
especially
think
with the
they're
stuff with the
they're
whole Trump thing that have been coming out about for
thrashing and really, just clawing at their last attempt to seize power because they were on edge. Um, and I don't want to get too political. I mean, I thought that I hated Trump at first. I thought that like, who is this guy? He's racist. He's this. He's that. But really, I was just echoing what I was hearing publicly, like mainstream media. He's not the most likable guy.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There's no doubt. But I've I've learned to measure people by what they do, not what I hear about them. And so when I look and I see some of the things that he's done,
Like the children who've been let out from underground
yes,
facilities.
yeah, like
Like,
the
that's not talked
like the
about, is it? That he's
oh,
actually saved how
God,
many children? Who? What president
countless.
did that?
It's still
This has
going.
been
It's
going on
still
for so
going.
long. This whole thing, and
Over
he's the first one to actually do something about it. It must have been known about by the elites,
for
by people in
sure.
his circle.
That's why they attack. That's why they attack any. It's not about Trump. It's about anyone that opposes the powers that be, and that's what he's
Right.
doing. And again, love him or hate him, it doesn't matter. He's doing what he's doing. He is being attacked, and that's why.
To be
So
more neutral about it, I mean, if you look at oh, Bernie Sanders got like smeared, and it was unfair in the Democrat primaries or whatever last time. It it was it was unfair what happened to him with by he was kind of betrayed by his own party essentially, right?
they don't. It's not about parties. They don't even
It's
care.
about the
That's why a
Overton
lot of
window.
Republicans don't like Trump.
Yeah,
Not a. It's not even a
mm.
bipartisan issue. It's a person. It's a personal issue. When a
And also
person
the media.
can't be controlled, that's that's where they will stop at nothing to destroy that person. Either
Yeah,
literally, either literally, or in terms of their reputation, which is
right.
what they really go after.
And also,
So
there's a left-wing politician in the UK. Wait, why am I going blank about his name? Well, Jeremy Corbyn. Now, I don't really like necessarily what he stands for, but um, yeah, like he's been treated unfairly, accused of being an anti-Semite, just or supporting. He doesn't like the state of Israel, right? Which is generally
okay,
used as a puppet state in the Middle East anyway by America. So, which in America, when Trump was in power, I would say it was essentially a ball puppet, like most states are.
yeah,
And what are the states that are considered rogue states? The ones that aren't part of it so
yeah.
much, like
Well,
Russia.
that's another thing. It's like the false information behind a Russia collusion. It's
Oh
been
yeah, that
four
was
years and there's zero evidence. Zero. Come on. And we talk about I don't know if you want to go there, but if you want to talk
the thing is, it's
I
just a
feel like we
tricky issue
missed the
for me
point though.
because I
Hold
want to
up, hold
be
up.
neutral, but at the same time, I want to be honest. So,
Yeah,
uh,
just objective. I'm not in favor. Here's what I'm in favor of. Pro-human future. That's what I'm in favor of. I think we kind of like we I feel like we missed something a second ago though. We were talking about man, it was just a few minutes ago. Oh, okay. I think I was going to clear up like the last bit about hearing the frequency and how it seems to me like as things escalate in terms of they're both fueling each other. So Trump's taking actions that are kind of like cutting them off at the knee in terms of globalists. And then we see an acceleration of their plans, right? And then we see also an acceleration of the awakening of the general populace. And
yeah, I
you
mean,
kind of,
they're shooting themselves in the foot.
yeah, yeah. But it's like, it's snowballing now. They can't stop it. They can't like dial back. They got to keep trying to push this through all the way. And, I had my own personal experience where I was trying to get out of where I was and get to a better quality of life. And you mentioned, that in that process, I was probably raising my vibration or whatever. And that's why now I can hear the thing. But I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people who claim to be able to hear these certain, I don't know, it's supersonic. I don't know how they're categorized, but these frequencies that aren't in the normal range of sound. And I don't even have the best hearing. Like
Is this linked
I've
to like 5G? Maybe we could go
I
into
don't
that.
know.
I don't know.
I don't know if
That's
it's
not
that
a hobby.
because when we had 4G internet, I could still hear it, but or the 2.4 gigahertz was the standard. But what I'm saying is, it's being dismissed as a hearing issue. Like I think they call it tinnitus. I may be
I mean, I
wrong.
think maybe tinnitus might exist as a hearing issue, but it can't be
Yeah.
dismissed as that every time you hear ringing, right?
No, 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 no. And that's what I'm saying. I can hear the difference when the router is on and off. It's a loud, to me, it's like a loud internal sound. I don't hear it like a car horn honking off in the distance.
That's like you
I
hear it
hear
in your
it
ears.
in my inner ear.
Yeah.
Like it's not hitting as a loud sound. It's loud inside my ears. It's weird. But when I'm away from all that, like say, if I'm just out on some land away from internet signals, I don't hear any more ringing.
Oh,
So it's not a constant issue with my ear. It's it depends on what I'm exposed to, what I'm around. And that's how I've been able to distinguish. This has nothing to do with like uh, degenerating hearing or tinnitus or whatever it's called. It's very much circumstantial. Like, am I around signals? I can hear them if especially if our own router is on. But yeah, so it's kind of a constant deal in the suburban environment. But that said, it looks like as things accelerate on one side, they accelerate on the other. So I think there's a
hmm.
proportionate response
Polarity as
in
well.
terms. What's that?
It's almost like a polarity thing,
With
like the law of
just with
one.
everything going on.
I mean, they're getting more extreme. I feel like it's gonna suddenly move towards unity, I guess. I'm not really backing myself up, but
Yeah, but it's happening, and I like you. I don't think that evil will prevail. And if it did, then what? I mean, like, how long is that gonna last, and to what end?
well,
So dysfunction can only go so far.
yeah, I mean, there would. The thing is, there's natural balance in the universe.
Yeah,
There's duality, so the light would make headway afterwards. It would all be all right in the universal level, but
yeah,
I mean, we're humans on Earth, so we've got a different scale to be concerned about, at least for the time being, right?
for sure. But this kind of goes back into what we were talking about. I think we all have a certain underlying certainty that good will prevail, like that light will prevail. And we've talked about collapsing realities and merging into the one that maybe is most ideal, or maybe we merge into the one that we're aligned with in terms of frequency.
Yeah,
So what do you think about that? Do you think you just kind of transcend or descend?
it depends on how the progress is going, but there are these two timelines apparently, right? There's one which is like a highway to Saratoga Ocean. I think she was channeling Archangel Michael when she said this. Which is saying there's one that's just like a highway to awakening, which is like everything just falls into place really great. The other
Mm,
one is like a longer route where eventually a dystopia is set up and it eventually fails.
yeah,
Now, so we must have moved past the point where evil winning and destroying humanity is possible, but I can't say for sure. I mean, my
yeah,
faith is tested, definitely, but um, I feel like it's been decided by a lot of beings, neutral or service to others, that like humanity falling here is unacceptable because like
yeah,
you think about it, they share DNA with us, right? Which means they must share a sort of energetic connection with us too, which means that
yeah.
they're going to be affected, right? If things go south here.
Well, and like if things
This
go
is a
south
special
here,
place in the universe, like a I mean, some people call it a prison, right? But reptilian prison or something. That's a negative way of looking at it because it's like even I think souls come here even knowing that it's difficult because it's like a great way to learn. And being here during an ascension event, now that's a
yeah.
great way for a soul to learn. So
And I think if it were to go full scale into this dystopian future and we're all augmented and controlled transhuman AI types, and we're just like serving this I don't know, malevolent force that wants to control everything, not just here, but like the entire galaxy, the entire
Mm.
universe. Have you seen Adventure Time, the show
Not
Adventure
that
Time?
much.
Okay. Well, there's a if you haven't seen Adventure Time, probably don't listen to this part and go watch it if you want. But there's a character called the Lich, and the Lich represents all darkness and evil. And there's this one crazy scene where it seems like all is lost, and the main character Finn, he's like the Lich can control everyone. So he comes in and he says fall, and they all fall to the ground, and he's like battling so hard. The main character is, it's almost like he's asleep trying to get up. He's trying to overcome the will that's being imposed on him. And the Lich says, you are strong, child, but I am beyond strength. And he goes on this monologue where he's talking about how him and all these ancient monsters are going to crusade across the galaxy until every light has been extinguished. And it's like, that's, he's like, we'll sail to a million worlds or whatever, and until every light has been extinguished. So it's almost like the antithesis of life going on there, represented by this
It
character.
reminds me of something in the Emerald Tablets of the Utopia Atlantean, where at one point he comes across this situation where, because he keeps exploring beyond his body to like different places,
Yeah.
not of wisdom,
Mhm.
right? And he comes across this place where there's the nine, these beings. I think they're archangels, and it doesn't describe them as they're these number of beings, like a council of these higher level beings that the impression is that they hold off the darkness, and he saw the darkness that was being held off and
Hmm.
quailed with fear. Like he was just like, no, this is Thoth we're talking about. And Thoth was like, nope, nope, nope. Like, and had to just like flee all the way back to his body because it's just like,
Oh man.
it just terrified him that much. It's like an absolute cosmic
Yeah.
horror. And let's not, I don't know, man. Like,
I think that's
there's
it. I think
darkness
that's the
and light.
duality.
Darkness and
Yeah.
light are like these fundamental forces of reality. Light is a creation thing. I mean, separation is important for the existence of reality, but there's a part of reality that maybe wants to tear everything down.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
that's
think
inevitable, right? In an
that's
infinite
inherent.
reality, yeah, you're going to get that.
Yeah. It's just inherent in existence. And
But since balance is a key feature of the universe, can darkness really take over? Can light
no,
really take over?
no. And I think that's it. I think this I think existence itself, in the Hermetic teachings, in the Kabbalion, for example, a book called the Kabbalion does a very good job of simplifying these principles, but as above, so below, you know, and this can be
Yeah.
looked at in every context of the meaning, microcosm, macrocosm, or even within nature, it represents the nature of the higher world, so, or the be all, so to speak. So you look at a tree, all the leaves fall off the tree at at a certain point in the season, and all those dead leaves fall to the ground. They rot, they decompose, and if you looked at it, you might think all is lost, right? If you didn't
Yeah.
understand
I thought
the
everything's dying.
the tree needs the leaves for photosynthesis. It needs them, but this is a natural process. So all the leaves fall off, they decompose, they seep into the ground, and those become nutrients for the tree to then again thrive and grow even more come springtime. It's cyclical. Everything is cyclical. So we look at all the darkness in the world and we think about like how awful that is, how unacceptable. This should be just a perfect world, right? That would be demented though. Like if
Yeah.
everything were perfect, We would have no contrast.
And also, yeah, the contrast is what really allows us to grow.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Goes back to comfort.
that's why duality exists, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it goes back to comfort and perspective. And we can't appreciate anything unless we experience what we don't want,
Like,
unless we experience the opposite. We can't we can't appreciate it.
I suspect that before we have our lives, like on some level, it's planned out on some level, right? And that we plan for these different challenges to go through based on what we have to learn based on our previous lives.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
now, the now is a huge factor. I go back to, I've after reading so many things and really like seeking to understand, try and figure out like why are things the way they are now, and what's do I have any control, over my fate, and really digging for this answer, when especially when life was less than ideal. I came to my own personal philosophy, which I think I may have shared the last time, but it's simply put, it's this: present moment determines direction, intentions determine all of the simultaneously developing uncontrollables, otherwise known as destiny or fate. So we're in this constant thing where what we do now determines what happens next. So it's like both are happening. You're not fully in control, but it's based on the intention that you bring and the actions that you're taking that determines what needs to happen next for you to evolve in the right direction. And we're going
right.
to have to keep learning the same thing until we learn it and move on. So,
Yeah, that's what I've been having. Like, okay, so you got a certain lesson, certain thing that's going on internally in your mind,
yeah,
uh, maybe to do with negative emotion of some kind or negative self-belief or something, and it keeps being tested. And
right.
if you can manage to let go of what no longer serves, uh, then basically that whole story arc or that whole dynamic that keeps repeating will stop. And you might have a new one, or it might just that'll be a weight off your shoulders and your frequency will rise. Like you need to deal with that negativity. And one thing I'm concerned about is that some people when they talk about the Great Awakening, they just talk about they want to focus entirely on the light. And
Yeah.
you can't do that. And when I have done that,
It's
it hasn't worked
delusional.
out well. It hasn't worked
Yeah,
out well
it's
at
it's
all.
delusional. It's not real. You gotta, as Jung would put it, Carl Jung, you have to tap into the shadow self, and that doesn't mean like, oh, you have to do dark magic. It's quite the opposite. It's you have to observe the light and the darkness within yourself before you can actually take control and actualize yourself or move in a direction of personal empowerment, of positive evolution. Like you're both, you're light and dark, and they both serve a purpose. And we don't like to consider that. We like to think everything is, I want everything to be all good and all light and positivity. Well, sometimes you have to tap into that shadow, like we have it
Right.
for a reason.
But at the very least, we can also let go of it but we need to accept it. If we don't accept it, then we're essentially putting it, pushing it back down again, right?
Well, it's like if you were to totally let go of your shadow, so to speak, and anything other than light and positivity, you would just be an infant.
And
You
I
would
think we're
just
on a slightly different wavelength
you
here.
would you have to have an understanding of, a knowledge of. It doesn't mean you have to do negative
Right, but
in the
you'd
world.
want to be core conscious of the darkness, right? You don't want to just have
Right.
it repressed, controlling you without you realizing.
Oh, absolutely. What I'm saying is that think of when we look at traditional religious perspective of God, God is God is very wrathful, right? Like there's a light and a dark to God. God is all everything he does is for the right reason, right? There's the intention. He's trying to create a better world and like look out for you, but a flood, the great flood and all the trials and tribulations and all these things, this is the illustration and the embodiment of the light and the dark. Like, for example, if someone were to be threatening, let's say you're in a life threatening situation, are you just supposed to lay down and just stare up at the sky and wait on something else or someone else to save you? Or are you going to tap into that darkness, that shadow, that animalistic capability to defend yourself? It's like
Oh, that's
there's
true.
there's different elements, and we like to be politically correct and say, oh, just meditate 4 hours a day and live this zen perfect life, and maybe if someone threatens your life, you just sit there and think the universe is gonna work it out for you. I don't know, but for me, I know that if I need to, I would definitely be ready. And I don't want to, but if I had to, I would do whatever it takes to preserve what's most valuable to me with the right intentions, like for the right reasons. Like I'm not
For
going to let
serving
anyone
others, you wouldn't do
hurt
it.
my hurt my family or hurt me and not act in preservation,
What if
like
someone
not
did do that?
fight for the greater good.
Right, but what if someone did hurt someone in your family? What would you do then?
No, I mean like life-threatening situation,
Right.
not
I'm not.
like.
I know what your answer probably is. I was just testing to see if there's any revenge aspect there.
No, I think like stuff happens and most of it is self-imposed,
Mind over
so
matter, mentalism. It's this idea that we just go to reality. So
it's like don't put yourself in negative situations in the first place. You know what I mean? So I practice both. Like I'm gonna practice the accountability aspect that says like I'm not gonna go engage in things and behaviors that are gonna put me in a situation in an environment where things like that I don't want to happen are liable to happen. So I'm not gonna go out drinking in a bar and someone starts something with me and now I'm protecting myself. Well, what am I doing with my life in the first place?
we have these ego reactions, and everyone have
Yeah.
them. Even well, I mean, you can even have it with gurus, but it'll be or whatever, but it'll be rare. But like, um, yeah, like I
Like
got
I'm
to a
gonna
point
live.
where I beat myself up for having those reactions on a certain level, but then I started realizing that like every time you feel that inclination to react, like you feel get defensive or something, like there's an opportunity to kind of stop, to accept how you feel and just let it go. And if you do that enough times, you will react less to that situation because that situation might be teaching you something. There might be someone who says that's the perfect thing to really piss you off because they are reflecting your shadow, right? They're drawn to you
Yeah.
and you're drawn to them on a an attraction field level, like
Right.
based on your other's shadows and what you haven't worked out yet. On some cases, maybe even like some pre-planned before your life. Like if it's a really big thing, maybe you're like these two people end up these big rivals, and then they actually end up becoming friends later on. And maybe they knew each other before their lives and they planned for that whole thing.
That's an interesting take as well, because sometimes I feel like in this whole experience that some people are real, and I'll get back to the
Oh,
context of what I
yeah.
mean and that, but some people are real, and then some people are just a part of the game. Like most people, I don't know. I don't want to spin this in a negative context. The best way I can explain it is like when you go and play, say, like Grand Theft Auto online, or even just the game itself, right? You can play and you're playing through the game, but you're the only real person in that game, and you know it. Like the character you're controlling is being controlled by you. The rest of it is a simulation to lay out a set of circumstances for you to play through that experience.
Well, I mean, you don't really get into the territory of like essentially dehumanizing people because you're like, well, they're not real. They're just part of the simulation, right? Um,
Nah, and I don't mean
and
it.
essentially, we don't know, right? And it's more,
Right.
I think that's a better thing to focus on. You don't know if someone's real or not, or someone might be real, but thing is, someone might be unconscious because they might be have not have dealt with certain things. So they're like, it's like using less of your free will. So they not be dealing with karma and certain negative stuff that's going on. So it's heavily distorting how they see things.
Well, and what
Uh,
I'm getting at with this is that, like you kind of described, this may have been planned all along. Like we may have gone into this human experience willingly and planned on submersing ourselves in this human experience. I mean, maybe it is a simulation, and maybe this is why we see certain things within this reality where everything breaks down into code, and the universe is code. You know, they're coming out with all these findings in quantum physics, especially where they say like literally the universe runs on ones and zeros. And so just maybe, and I think we have to treat it real, but just maybe we went into this. Sometimes it's theorized as to be an ancestry simulation, like where we run through lifetimes and lifetimes of human civilization in an effort to get it right or to avoid um, pitfalls.
yeah,
So,
there's
like,
different levels of as above, so below, right?
yeah,
So while we do this individually, you might go back and try to learn lessons of different lifetimes. Well, whole
yeah,
groups of souls might be doing that,
right.
going through periods, trying
And
to change it up or whatever.
and maybe this is what's happening on a cosmic level, and it's not so binary like we want to think it is. Or maybe a civilization much like ours is existing right now, and part of that civilization's effort to succeed and head in the right direction is having created a super simulation that you can't even distinguish from the real thing. So then we go through this maybe with our friends or with people we know, and we go through and we live out. So maybe it's just like this, but right now, us talking, who we are, where we are, we're in this simulation version of our real world in an effort to preserve the best interests of society. And then it
Maybe. Do you
feels
mean like
like
in
a
a digital
lifetime.
way?
Yes, yes.
Maybe. I mean, it's possible, but if it's sufficiently advanced,
Look
it wouldn't make it.
around.
If it's sufficiently advanced, it wouldn't make a difference whether or not it's computerized or spiritual.
No, it doesn't matter. It's the same
And
process.
it's all fractal. Reality is fractal. It goes infinitely up and
Thank
down.
you. Yes, we live in a fractal holographic matrix. That's what this is. Everything is made of the same thing. There's a digital signature, a code to the universe. There's a code to everything, the way that everything manifests in this reality, whether you're on Earth or somewhere else. So this is a fractal universe. It's something we can never actually figure out. Like we're not gonna find every planet and categorize everything. It's infinite from what we can tell. And
Right.
it's,
There's still the choice: do we move towards the light or the
yeah,
darkness?
right. But I think this is an environment, again, whether it's cosmic and naturally occurring by the source, by the all, whatever you want to, God, whatever you want to refer to the source of all creation and life as, um, that very well may be the case. And that may be the process by which it is figuring out itself through us, like broken itself down into smaller individualized life forms infinitely, like all the way down to the microbial world and beyond that. um, but it just seems that given everything that's going on, it's possible possible that due to the signatures of creation and the nature of things, it's possible that we are in a simulation. And it's given the certain things like deja vu, and think of the movie Inception. It's like a dream. We don't remember how we got here.
A
We're
dream
just
within a
in it.
dream.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
he's
it's
talking.
all coming back from source, and source
Yeah.
dreams back in time or something.
And maybe again, it doesn't negate if we are in a simulation right now, like we're in a supercomputer, and there's a reality that resembles this one, but it's real in the true sense. And we've recreated it, kind of like think of The Sims. You know, we create virtual worlds in this world, so it's not far fetched to think or consider this as a possibility. And this is the general consensus among quantum physicists, that we are in a simulation. This is a simulated reality. And a lot of quantum physicists actually, they realize this definitively, and they have a hard time dealing with that realization. So um, that said, I'm okay with it. I mean, I think it's possible. I don't think it matters one way or the other, because even if we are in a simulated world in an effort to create a better world, I guess I'm just assuming that that would be the purpose, and not so much that it's like the Matrix where we're all in a bunch of pods and they're just stealing our life force. I'm not
I
going
mean,
that route with it.
maybe
It
if
could be.
they won, but
Yeah.
that wouldn't be the fractal that wouldn't be the fractal infinite simulation. That would be a shallow copy.
I don't know. We can make, there's games that go on forever. Like Minecraft. I'm not being funny here, but we're able to program games to be infinite now,
Yeah,
just on one disk. It's like a program that will run on infinitely. There's no end to the worlds, there's no end to the game. So that's what the fractal technology is. So we very well could be in a fractal simulation. And again, I don't, I guess it could be very concerning and upsetting at the idea of that our life energy is just being harvested while this is going on by a bunch of, like, I don't know, machine robots or something like that. I don't, it's, that's equally as possible, I guess. But given the way things are going, I think, and it's just my perspective, but I think it doesn't really matter
mm.
whether or not this is a computer simulation or the natural or the nature of things cosmically. It's the same process. And I'm just diving into this because you raised an interesting point that I think I think of often. It feels like only a handful of people, maybe a couple handfuls of people, are actually real to me. Like, I feel like I've known them forever. I feel like connected to them in a way that goes beyond how long I've known them,
right.
or
So when you
goes
meet someone for
beyond
the first time,
this.
You mean that feels like
Yeah.
you recognize them, like people in the
Sometimes.
course,
Yeah.
the broadcasters, of course. Do you feel like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I even feel like, I don't know, like we're in the same class or something. And I know some people more than other people, but I still like kind of know you. You know what I mean? It just feels like
All right, you should watch
different
the
than
episode.
your
There's an
interactions with
episode
other
I did, a
people.
solo cast, where I was reading part from the Synchronicity Key out, and it's like to describe the afterlife and the different stages you go through in the afterlife based on people put in a trance and what they say while unconscious, like or put in that
Okay.
trance, and like it's just you should watch it, like because it describes like basically there's a whole group of souls that yeah they do it together and their lives are interwoven, but they might play different
Yeah.
roles with each other. Like one person might be like your lover one life, but they might be your brother in another life.
Yeah.
I just had a thought.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're my lover one life and I just don't remember. Oh Jesus.
Oh man. But that's the thing though. It's seems like a simulation. We get so attached to the self that we hear something like that and it's just the bizarre idea of that is like, whoa, it throws everything off. But listen, if I'm playing Grand Theft Auto, again, I go back to this because it's like a semi-realistic reproduction of the world. I know it's like far off, but semi-realistic. I'm in there on this game, killing people, running them over. I would never carry on like that in this life because it's just totally different. But in the game, it's part of the game. You know what I mean? It's part of the experience. It's
I
part
mean,
of the simulation,
there are
the
people,
story.
there are
So
people who don't have any empathy. Who,
yeah,
I mean, it might actually on some level be more resonate with them more. So, well,
maybe.
that's
I
Johnny.
mean, maybe they get into like dark games and stuff like that to
I mean,
simulate it. But I'm
that
speaking
stuff
from
exists.
like just a comparison. Well, just as a comparison, like if I were to go, I don't really play online, but just for the analogy, it's like if you play a game online where components of the game are simulated people, and then there's like your party or your group that you play with, those are the only real people in there. It's
Are you
like
sure there
you,
aren't
your
other
friends, and y'all
parties?
link up. Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, it
I
depends on the
honestly, I
game.
feel a certain resistance to believing that. It might be true, but maybe it's best not worried about. Like maybe I just prefer the idea. What resonates with me more is that okay, there's a party that go in and they interact, right? And then there's another party we interacting, and you might interact with them, but they're not so
For
much
sure.
connected. And then it's like,
Right.
and the more you interact with them, the more connected they are. So there's your close family, soul family, then the looser soul family. It's a bit bigger. This is what it was how it was described in the synchronicity key as well, like from memories out, piece
Yeah.
together memories that people have from outside in between lives. And then
But
there's
then again, there's
a
a
larger
simulation
scale of it too.
component. Yeah, there's a simulation component there. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an experience to have together. So I use Grand Theft Auto because that's a perfect example of there being other people who aren't conscious beings playing.
Are you
Like you can
suggesting
play
there's only
Grand Theft
like
Auto online.
so you're not are you suggesting there's only like 30 real people on this planet or something?
No, no. What I'm saying is like per experience, like everyone can't be playing at the same time. Otherwise, there would just be a bunch of people with no simulated
There probably are
experience. So
NPCs. Yes, we can talk about how many, what
that's what
proportion,
I'm
but that's
saying.
ultimately fruitless. That they exist is probably enough, in my opinion. Because you could go back to a
It's probably a
different
what?
NPC. That they exist is probably enough. It maybe another
Oh yeah,
time we
yeah,
could
yeah.
go back to this time, this period, and play with a different an NPC or spawn in a new
Yeah.
character and like do stuff that way, like, and we
Well,
change it
it
up.
just triggered the thought when you brought up, you know, seeming feeling like you know someone. It brought up the thought in my mind is I've had this concept in my head before where I'm like, yeah, it feels like you're bound by the story of the game, by the experience to connect with the people that are playing at the same time as you, and that the rest of the game is an experience that you all go through together because it's so mysterious how we feel so connected or we feel like we know someone so well and they could be a total stranger and you can't explain it. It's more of an intuitive thing. It's like I feel like we've known each other forever and
Or you
in
click with
certain
someone,
cases with
you meet
certain
someone, and
people.
your
Right.
friendship just flowers just naturally.
Right, right. And you may be totally different. You may have a lot of, you know, surface level differences, but there's something there where it feels like this is exactly, it makes sense. That's what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Could be friend, could be intimate relationship, could be, uh, you know, work related or business thing where you're like, yes, I feel like this is exactly how it was supposed to go. Like, thank God this happened, or thank God I met that person, or the other way around. Like, someone's really glad they met you and you changed their life. So it's just this weird interconnectedness where I feel like what you're talking about aligns with this in a way that we could be engaging in this in groups and the rest of it's a simulation, which is fine. That like there could be other groups at play as well. I go back to the Grand Theft Auto reference. Like you can play online by yourself, you can play online in a group. There's other people playing by themselves or in a group, and then there's the rest of the game environment, which is computerized. And there's still people in the game who are not players, they're part of the simulation.
It's like,
And
I mean, in
that's what allows
sport,
you to have that dynamic experience.
it's like in sport, and I know a lot of people don't play it anymore because it wasn't the best game there was, but it was an interesting kind of interesting dynamic. So you go through these different stages, so like from being a cell all the way up to spin into space, and like
Hmm.
so people could create their own creatures, and they would, if you're online, they
Okay.
could appear. Other people's creations would appear in your world like randomly.
This
So
sounds like a game called, I think it's called Everything. And you can be like a penny on the street, you can be a skyscraper, you can
how do
be
you be a
anything and
penny?
everything. It's just weird. It's like you can control these things. You can, I don't have it. I just saw a
Is it
trailer
like Goat
for it,
Simulator?
but you can, I don't know if it's that. It's like that there's a underlying substance behind the game where they wanted people to feel the interconnectedness of everything, and it's there's this dynamic where you could be a roach, you could be a dolphin, you could be a drone flying in the air. It's just very artistic, and it's like I think it's called Everything, and you can literally be everything, and it goes on and on, and it's a, you know, it's a very expansive game.
Oh, I
There's
hadn't heard
not,
of
I don't think there's really a point to it, but they kind of, there's not like a campaign to it, but the point is just the shifting of perspective and having that experience. And like throughout the game, it might give you some Alan Watts quotes or like some random, you know,
Huh.
kind of enlightening things tossed
That
in the
sounds
mix.
great. That
So
sounds great.
kind of sounds similar to the, what you said the game was Spore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of sounds. I wonder if it's the same creators. It sounds very
We could
similar.
quickly look it up. Uh, do you think that fictional worlds are real in the multiverse somewhere?
It's an interesting question because, oops, um, real is a relative term. So I think everything, in a sense, is real, and maybe,
What, the game or
um, yeah. Well, it's like
they're
we
not by
don't
the
know
same
why
creator?
we do things. Okay,
But oh
we
wow,
don't
this
know
game looks
why we
pretty
do
neat actually.
things. Yeah, it looks really cool. I think I might get it. Um, we don't know why we do anything. Like me sitting here talking to you right now, I'll reference a couple of things. There's a Rick and Morty episode, um, which I'm not a huge fan of the fourth season, but I get it. I'll just say I think it was rushed under pressure, and I think the creator did a good job of putting some substance in there. I love the first three seasons, but anyway, in the fourth season, the train episode
Oh yeah,
where they're on
yeah,
the train and
yeah.
the
Oh,
train represents the loop,
and then the
and
thing
they're
with
just trapped
Jesus,
in this
the thing
loop.
with Jesus, and oh,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, when it's
I'm
just
not even going to quote all of it, but so it's like that what do you make of that? That could be the case when we make
it's
video
based the
games.
hero's journey,
That
I think,
could be, well,
linked.
and it
The
was
hero's
also the
journey is like an
trap.
algorithm in reality, at least in this simulation. That's what I think.
Yes, but it's also gives credence to the idea that what you're talking about is, do you think that it's real when we make a video game? Is that real for them?
It's like
We don't
40K,
know. We
40K.
don't know because we don't know. So it could be, and I referenced the Rick and Morty episode for that reason. Um, and there's also
This episode's
what
when he
is it?
knows he's in the
So
simulation.
yes, he knows, he figures it
Yeah.
out,
Also, the
and
Joker. The
then
Joker knows in the comics. Apparently,
huh, interesting. Comics are static, so I don't know if that counts because they're not coding. It's just pictures. But
well, for
I
us.
know sometimes they just do that they do it as a play, and my lighting is getting super crazy over here, but um,
Oh, you're
they
just
do it
you're
as
not
like a
sending.
play on yeah, right. I'm about to dematerialize into light. Um, they do it as a play on reality, where they kind of observe the fact that they're in a comic or in a show or whatever the narrative may choose to do. But one thing that I really liked was the Black Mirror episode, the Bandersnatch
I haven't seen it.
episode. Did you see that one?
I haven't seen any of Black Mirror.
Okay.
Funny enough, I probably should.
Oh man, yeah,
I've heard
yeah,
about it.
for sure. They're pretty good. They're really good. They're great. But I don't want to give this episode away for you then. But I will say that there's an episode that they made, the Bandersnatch episode, in which you have to make decisions while you're watching it. So you're interactive in the story and you affect the story. It's it's an interactive episode, so you have to make decisions for the characters, and it changes the layout of the story. It changes the way the episode goes.
There were
So
games a bit like that, like
yeah,
Telltale games.
yeah, and those are similar in nature. But what it does is, obviously these are actors, and so we know they acted the scenes out. But it goes back to, in part of the episode, they express an awareness or a conscious suspicion that someone is influencing their choices.
Right.
So they're like, I feel like they look around and they're like, I feel like someone is watching me. It's you. You're the one that they
Yeah,
feel
yeah, that's
like is
great. That's
watching
great.
them.
That was because what if they're actually feeling it and it's okay, that's one.
Yeah.
But what if
So
you're being watched too?
someone's
Makes you feel like
definitely watching.
so. I mean,
Yeah.
like
This is
makes
what
you
I'm talking about.
you need to
This
accept the
is how it
idea of
goes
not really
deep.
having privacy in the way you think, huh?
Privacy is a funny word. I mean, we already don't have any privacy in our society today. Period. There is no privacy. But the funny thing is, like, I just heard Mike Tyson talking about it too. He's talking about the ants and how he was speaking to his wife and explaining how the ants went off and they built all these colonies and interconnected, and they did all this in a season, in preparation for winter. And then he's like, and they have no clue. It would take us exponentially longer to do the equivalent. Like, so that kind of ties into how they're on a different time. That may have been like 1,000 years to them or something. I don't know, but to us, it's a season. It's a couple months, few months, and the ants dig all these channels and connect all these different
Oh,
high
amazing.
mounds and all this. And then he's like, so we're sitting here watching the ants, and they have no clue. They have no
Have you
awareness
seen
that we're
Ants
watching them.
Canada?
So what's that?
There's a YouTube channel called Ants Canada where it has all these different, these big, not tanks, but containers with ant colonies in them.
Oh, okay. No, I
And
haven't
it's
heard
like,
of it.
but anyway, yeah, never mind. But what
The
you're talking
point
about
is we're the point is we're observing them, and they have no conscious awareness of it. They're an ant. Now they know when we get right up on them and we pick them up or smash them. They know something's going on, but if we're just watching them, they have no clue. They're in a different world. They're literally in a different world.
right.
So who's watching us? That's what it that was
Yeah.
his question.
Well, probably Jesus. No, seriously, the Christ consciousness watching you everywhere. Uh,
Well, it's like,
uh,
what if we're a particle in in a petri dish right now?
I
Like
think, yeah,
we're a
I think
microbe.
that the highest level of reality in this, okay, in the law of one, there's these different densities, seven densities, and then there's different octaves, which are like the same thing on a larger scale. So the what I see it is like you go to the top level of this part of reality is basically like a quark on a level above, and vice versa,
Yeah,
going down.
yeah.
Like so,
As
it's all
above,
that
so below.
fractal. So
And
we
that's
are in a sense, and in a way, at least the way I feel about this awakening with like, at least with loving beings who have awakened or fourth density positively, at least they're not judgmental. So you don't have
well,
anything to be self-conscious about with beings that aren't judgmental.
well,
That's how I comfort myself with it.
it depends also how we're being observed, because when we observe particles, we can only see so far into it.
Oh, yeah, quantum physics. You can observe the movement, momentum, or whatever, or the
But we
position.
can't see
But that's how they can't interfere with us directly.
exactly. Well, they can, but they
They-
can't. Like, not us. So my thought
yeah,
is
but it's
this.
like we are like that quantum stuff is affects their interaction with us.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, we're the quantum particles of another world,
In
a
a
level
sense,
above.
yeah, in a
Yeah.
sense.
Right.
I'm gonna
So
have to go pretty
me
soon,
too.
but if you've got
Yeah.
any particular insight you want to finish off with.
Yeah, I think the last thing would be in alignment with this theory, the microcosm, macrocosm thing. We haven't figured out the electron. We look at we're aware of them, but we can't actually observe an electron. We can't we can measure it, we can know that it's there, but just as some particles gain and lose electrons, it's like the elusive component
Right.
to not finally zooming all the
There
way
might be
down.
different frames of reference because they've looked at the brain and how it looks like clusters of galaxies. So
Yes.
It could
And
be
our
from our frame of
universe,
reference as a brain, but at the same time, it might simultaneously be a universe just from a
exactly.
different format or something, a
And
different
that's why
matrices
like
of
the
dimension, even.
the atlas of an anatomy is the vertebrae that connects your skull to your spine, basically. And it's the in Greek mythology, you know, Atlas, they think people mistakenly describe Atlas as holding up the world, but in the actual context, it's described as Atlas holds the celestial spheres, which
Oh,
would be your brain. So, of the universe, the celestial spheres of the universe. So, to finish off, I think we are the electron. I think
it might
we
be.
are the thing, like a whole human civilization, the whole mass of intelligent life on a planet is the tiniest particle of an atom or another element that can gain or lose electrons. That's like us traveling or expanding from planet to planet, you know, and how it varies with certain elements. So that's my spacey theory. I think we are the electron, and I think if we weren't limited in our ability to zoom in on this, if we could zoom in all the way on the smallest unit of matter, which would be, in this case, the electron. And I'm not speaking about collided and broken up matter that breaks into quarks and this and that, all these little particles. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the smallest unit of energetic matter, which would be the electron that carries the charge. I think we would see people if we could zoom all the way in on the micro scale
Now, I don't
of
know if
our
it's
world.
exactly like that, but I do think the principle in general is accurate. That resonates with me. So I hope, listener, whether you're an ant, electron, or whatever, I hope you enjoyed it. Uh, we went all over the place, and yeah, it's pretty fun. So bye for now, and thanks for coming, Eric.
All right, Nick. Thanks for having me. Always enjoy it and look forward to the next one.
All right, see you.